Were you sitting
I'm
here?
okay.
Thank you.
Good morning. How are y'all? I'm Mark. I'm a sociologist. I come from the Social Media Research Foundation. We're headquartered in California, but we've got people in 14 time zones. Maybe somebody from this time zone would like to join us. We produce a piece of software. You may be familiar with this. This is NodeXL, the Network Overview, Discovery, and Exploration add-in for Excel. It's free and open software that attempts to empower the non-algorithmic to be as clever as the very algorithmic. There are certain skills that the computer scientists in the room have about access to data, about processing and manipulation of that data that are probably not in the skill sets of the social scientists in the room, with the exception of those wonderful mutants who somehow got both strands, that are both computational scientists and social scientists. That's wonderful. I didn't get that. I don't know. A lot of people might not have gotten that. So I think there's an opportunity, though, where we build tools that encapsulate a lot of the abilities of these computational specialists and deliver those abilities to the non-algorithm. There are tools that have evolved over the last 30 years that have taken otherwise technically very demanding tasks, let's say like page layout for desktop publishing, and have reduced it to essentially something that I can do. And if I could do it, then it's reduced the skill demands very low. What we've been doing with NodeXL is trying to bring the tools of network analysis generally, and in particularly social media network analysis, to a population of people who are not likely to be coders. Now, the coders are welcome, but the non-coders outnumber the coders by about 3 orders of magnitude. And so we would like to support the humanities professors, the political scientists, the sociologists even, people for whom their training tends not to include learning how to code in Python. And when we enable that, I think 1,000 flowers will bloom. We will enable everyday researchers to go and get data from social media services and analyze that data in reasonably sophisticated ways without bearing the cost of actually learning how to calculate eigenvectors and value. And the result, I think, serves the issue of having credible information services by being able to actually see the landscape of the social. We are mostly all now engaged in social media. Anybody here really just a rejectionist? Any non-social media people here? That's up there with like refusing respiration at this point. Not many people survive that choice. So what has happened, though, is we now live in this landscape. We live in a social landscape that, ironically, is very poorly mapped. We live on a planet that is now pretty well mapped. From space and from air, on the ground, we have pretty well mapped every millimeter of Earth. I don't think there's any part of the planet we haven't seen yet. And yet, if you think about how and where you spend your day, except when you're here, although some of you may be on Facebook right now, you're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, email, message boards, and have you ever seen the landscape of these places? And I'm going to argue no. You have. And that the reason you haven't is the designers of these things never want you to see them in an analytic and useful way, because their goal is to get you to see the advertisement, to get you down to the page view level. They don't really want you to step back and see the space as a whole. But this is where we live. This is where our culture takes place. This is where our politics take place. I noticed in Lafayette there is a courthouse and there's a square. There wasn't anybody in it. And I suspect if you want to find Lafayettans, there's a shopping mall somewhere around here, right? That's where the people go. But shopping malls are not civic spaces. They're pseudo-civic spaces. They're places where we go to pretend to be engaging in civic life. Why is it not real? Because it's a commercial property and you don't have rights. You have certain allowances. They allow you to come in and shop. But just try signing people up for a petition. Even like, I like blue. You like blue? Sign this paper. reasonably innocuous topic. You will be thrown out of every shopping mall in America if you try to sign people up for let's support the color blue. The same is true in Facebook and YouTube, Twitter, email lists. Most of these spaces are commercial spaces. So one concern I have is that I have become the social scientist of shopping malls. I have no rights there. I don't have a scientific, right to access data, and I can be turned off at any moment. And in fact, on May 7th, Twitter will turn off access to one of the major sources of data in its service. We will no longer be able to see who follows who. Not practically, not really. And so, for commercial purposes, they have turned off a source of data, and essentially that's like blinding you to the relationships in this mall. So, we need better tools. We also need potentially to reform either the rules of these commercial spaces, or some of you are technologists, can I have an alternative space, please? I'd like Wiki Twitter. I'd like Wiki Facebook. I would like services that actually start with a public goal that are based on the idea of rights to access to data, rather than a commercial goal, which is all about rights to access to IP only. And so my concern is that we have just walked blindly into these spaces. Not only don't we understand the spaces, but we don't even have rights in those spaces to understand them. So we get away with analysis. And when we do, we actually do see some very interesting patterns, and I will just show you, I think, my favorite current pattern is this one. This shows us that there are different ways, hashtags, for example. So this is Twitter data. And so I don't want to make the claim that this applies to all social media services, but let's just take a look at Twitter. This asks and answers the question, how many different kinds of hashtags are there? And it's not an exhaustive answer, but at least 6 different kinds of hashtags. At which point the question becomes, which kind is your favorite hashtag? And what was your goal? Maybe you are the sponsor, or you wish to make this hashtag or this topic have a certain shape. Well, often we want things to go viral and get big, but volume is not the same as density. And so we may want to cultivate certain structures. It would be useful to actually see those structures and see the variety of those structures that are available. So here, these are 6 different topics in Twitter. There are the maps, or network diagrams. They contain some number of people, Twitter users. They all share the property of having tweeted a message with a certain keyword, hashtag, URL, whatever. And then we build the set of connections, the collection of connections among all these people. And they're connected because they reply to each other, they mention each other, and of course they follow each other. And that's exactly the thing that we won't be able to see soon. But all the green lines are follow lines. Blue lines are I reply or mention you. Obviously, replying and mention is a more costly behavior and is therefore much more rare in the data space. There are far fewer replies and mentions than there are follows. It's easy to follow someone. But the emergent structure of these places tells us a story about what they're really like. And laser. This is what we're calling polarized. These are the shapes that get formed whenever typically a U.S. political topic is being discussed. Why just the U.S.? Because the beautiful thing about the tool of the project is that we now have a global user base, and my Korean colleagues and my South American colleagues and my European colleagues say, we don't see this pattern. When we look at Korean debates about politics, I assure you, they have vigorous debate. They don't have this houses divided upon themselves. This is the discussion of a hashtag that President Obama, President of the United States of America, tells the world, you should tweet. Man, I want advertising like that. But he says, you should tweet a particular hashtag. That hashtag is My2K. This is the My $2,000 that he's arguing every household in America is going to get hit if we don't have tax reform. And so on November 28th, 2012, he said, you should tweet My2K. I assume he thought you should tweet in support of My2K, this idea. And these people did support it. Not these people, though. And so this divided against itself 2 dense clusters with very little connective tissue. That's the design or the pattern of a polarized topic, and it's the absolute opposite of this one, which is inverted. And this is the discussion of people who call themselves social media managers. This is C Manager Chat, the community manager chat. You know, if you know what C Manager Chat means, you know someone in C Manager Chat. And so by comparison, Y2K, you know, you didn't necessarily have to connect to everybody, but here in C Manager Chat, everybody connects to everybody. By comparison, this is a brand. Brands, almost nobody connects to anybody. You saw Toy Story. Wow, me too. But that's like saying we both breathe air. It means nothing about our connections to each other. So this is a brand, that's Lumia. This is what we're calling a bazaar. The groups get a little bit bigger, but there is no single group that is at the center of bazaar. This is broadcast, that's the New York Times right there, and it is at the center of a hub and spoke structure in which all these people have retweeted this hub. So the arrows go inward. This is the opposite of that structure. This is support. This is the Virgin America account, and it is replying to everybody. Therefore, the arrows go outward rather than inward. So 6 different kinds of social space. Which one are you occupying? And why doesn't the tool that you use tell you? Well, because the tools are not being designed to actually be analytic tools. They're being designed to be commercial tools. The goal is to insert a catheter into your wallet, not to provide some sustenance to your brain. And so my concern is that without better tools, without more practitioners using the tools to document the space, we are living on a map that's a lot like those old maps that say this way lays dragons. We just don't know what the landscape of social media looks like. I think we should. So with that, I'll take any questions or turn it over.
So, yeah. Thank you.